Welcome to the deep dive. If you're aiming for really high-impact research, especially within that huge sphere of European funding, well, you find out pretty quickly that the technical brilliance, that's only half the battle. Today, we're taking a scalpel to the foundational blueprint for success in these massive, multi-million euro research projects. The Dissemination and Communication Plan, the D&C plan for Horizon initiatives.
That's right. We're basically looking at this step-by-step guide that EU-funded consortia use. It's, essentially the required playbook for making a project work.
Right.
Our mission today, to pull out the core principles you absolutely need for maximum transparency, for getting measurable impact, and crucially, achieving real stakeholder engagement.
Because that's the difference, isn't it, between a project that just sort of exists on paper.
Exactly. And one that actually changes things, changes policy maybe, or gets taken up by the market.
We often think, or maybe assume, that the science itself, the technical output, that's the only thing that matters. But the European Commission, they're really clear, without a strong D&C strategy, that science risks just staying locked away.
Precisely. Look, the Commission isn't just funding experiments in a lab. They're funding solutions. A winning communication plan is what turns a, let's say, promising research proposal into a real verifiable success story. It's what drives those tangible outcomes the EC expects, whether that's moving policy forward, achieving significant market uptake, or even just raising public awareness. Without that strategy, the project's basically incomplete in their eyes.
Okay, let's unpack this blueprint then. But instead of just running through a checklist, maybe we can look at it in, say, 3 phases, focusing on the 8 kind of critical elements needed for high-impact delivery. So phase 1, this seems to be all about the core strategy and setting the rules of the game. Right? It kicks off with clear objectives and really nailing down who you're trying to reach.
Yeah, you absolutely have to start there. You need to link your communication goals directly to the Horizon program's expected impacts. So, for example, if you're building, a new smart grid system,
Okay.
your objective isn't just building the system. It's making sure regulatory bodies actually adopt the standards and that industry partners integrate the technology. It's about the use of the research.
And the sources we looked at really hammer this home. You cannot treat the world as just one big audience. They map out 4 specific tiers of target audiences and stress how you need to tailor things for each one.
That's absolutely essential. So, Tier 1, policymakers and regulators. They don't have time for long reports. They need highly targeted, concise policy briefs. Focus on the implications, not the deep methodology.
Got it.
Tier 2, industry partners and SMEs. They're practical. They need implementation guides, evidence that this thing is market ready.
Makes sense.
Tier 3, academic and research communities. Okay, these are your peers. They do want the technical details, the open access data. They need the nitty-gritty.
And then the final tier, end users and civil society. This feels like maybe the hardest group to reach because it requires the most, translation.
I think you're right. It often is. They need things like infographics, short videos, social media content that boils down complex outcomes into, tangible benefits for society.
Right.
Think about it. If our Green Tech Grid project example just sends a 50-page technical paper to a city council member or a complicated data link to a consumer group, well, the project immediately fails on that objective. The message has to fit the medium and the audience. Simple as that.
Now, setting up that strategy needs accountability, which brings us to governance. Honestly, I hear governance and I immediately think bureaucracy, more meetings.
I know the feeling.
Is mandating specific roles like a communication lead, a dissemination manager, work package leaders, is that really necessary? Or does it just create more overhead?
It sounds like overhead, but it's necessary because it stops things falling through the cracks. It prevents confusion and makes sure the execution is consistent. Think of it this way. The communication lead owns the big picture, the strategic story, the quality control.
Okay.
The dissemination manager handles the mechanics, getting publications out, organizing events, tracking the metrics, and the work package leaders. They provide the essential technical substance.
So clear roles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without that clear split, the communication strategy often just gets buried under the weight of the scientific deliverables. It happens all the time. This structure, it's the framework that actually supports that detailed, realistic timeline the EC demands.
Speaking of frameworks, this leads us neatly into measuring success. Key performance indicators, KPIs, it's not enough to just say, we'll communicate well. You need proof, quantitative proof.
Absolutely. And this is where projects often trip up. The difference between success and, not success, often comes down to tracking the right metrics, and specifically distinguishing between output and actual impact.
Output versus impact. Okay, explain that.
Output is the easy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the number of press releases you send out, the number of tweets, things you did. Impact is much harder to measure. It's about what changed because of what you did.
Right. So what are the gold standard KPIs we should be telling people to focus on?
Look for evidence of behavior change, of adoption. Yes, track your website traffic, track download counts. Those are useful outputs. But prioritize the more qualitative, impact-focused metrics.
Like what?
Things like the number of attendees at events where you have a real two-way dialogue, like workshops or webinars. And critically, look for citations of your work or explicit mentions in official policy documents or industry standards.
Oh, okay.
If the findings from our Green Tech Grid project get mentioned in a new EU energy directive, that is a verifiable metric of impact. That's what the EC really cares about.
Okay, so we've defined the audience, we've built the governance structure, set up our KPIs. But strategy means nothing if the execution is flawed, right?
Yeah.
What's the next critical area the EC really watches? Leveraging the full multi-channel mix. This is such a common failure point. You see projects pour literally all their resources into a highly technical, maybe even beautiful project website that nobody can find.
Right. 10 million projects with zero SEO optimization.
You'd be surprised. It happens.
Ouch. A beautiful invisible failure.
Exactly. So a winning plan needs balance. Yes, you need a dedicated SEO-optimized project website that's non-negotiable, but you must pair that with a consistent social media presence. Think LinkedIn for B2B and policy engagement. Segmented e-newsletters tailored to those 4 audience tiers we discussed earlier. And crucially, open data repositories sitting alongside your open access publications. The channels have to work together like a network.
And that whole infrastructure, it needs to last beyond the funding period, doesn't it? Which I guess takes us to open science and sustainability. This is about the project's long-term legacy. Yeah, this is definitely playing the long game. 2 key parts here. First, making sure all your project data sets follow the FAIR principles. That means making them findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable.
FAIR data. Got it.
That's fundamental for letting other researchers build on your work, for enabling future applications. Second, you have to plan for post-project maintenance. If you build some great new digital platform or tool, who's going to host it and keep it running after month 36 when the EU funding stops?
Good question.
That transparency, that forward planning, it widens the audience long term and really cements the project's legacy.
Okay, so we have the data, the infrastructure, the channels, but, I mean, we live in an age of information overload. How do you make people stop scrolling and actually care about your research? That sounds like the job of step 7. Showcasing success stories.
Exactly. Storytelling is what humanizes all this technical work. Illustrative case studies are basically required because they provide the context, the so what, that a raw data report just can't.
So what does that look like in practice?
It means actively collecting beneficiary testimonials. How did a local SME actually use your findings? What difference did it make? It means detailing early-stage pilot results, showing progress. And most importantly, connecting the research directly to that policy uptake we talked about. You have to tell the story of how your Green Tech Grid findings informed that new EU regulation. Narrate the impact.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting, because now we're diving into probably the biggest, most persistent barrier to impact, the language itself. Let's start with step 3, which is crafting compelling key messages.
Right. Before you even think about outreach channels or anything, you have to define a rock-solid, concise elevator pitch for your project.
Elevator pitch. Classic.
It is classic, but essential. And that pitch needs to be adaptable into, say, 3 or 4 core key messages. And these messages must constantly emphasize the project's novelty and, crucially, its societal relevance. The message can't just be, we researched X. It has to be, we researched X so that Y happens, where Y is the benefit to society or industry or policy.
And visual assets, things like infographics, short explainer videos, they sing essential here too, right? To reinforce those messages makes them shareable, especially for those wider audiences like civil society.
Absolutely essential. Those visuals are the tools you need to start breaking down that huge barrier inherent in what we sometimes call EU project speak.
Ah, yes, project speak. You mentioned science getting siloed earlier, but the blueprint really highlights this major structural problem that blocks effective translation. This specialized, often quite bureaucratic language. All the acronyms, terms like dissemination, exploitation, work packages.
This is honestly a major source of failure for many projects. Those terms might be administrative necessities within the project consortium, but they're completely opaque to the policymakers, the industry partners, the end users, the very people who need the outcomes the most.
And there's data on this.
Yeah, we found some really staggering research in the sources. Technical jargon can slash comprehension by up to 40% among non-specialists. 40%. Think about that. That's an enormous chunk of your potential audience.
Wow. Okay, conversely, what happens when you prioritize clarity? When you use plain language?
Well, the flip side is just as dramatic. Plain language versions of the same content can boost understanding by up to 60%. This communication gap isn't trivial. It directly limits stakeholder engagement, policy adoption, market uptake, everything the project is trying to achieve.
So the EU realized this, that to build public trust and ensure impact, they needed to push for a solution.
Exactly. They realized they needed to mandate a solution.
Okay.
Plain language guidelines.
Okay, tell us about the European Commission's push here. What are the core principles that really apply directly to these Horizon projects?
Well, their overall goal is about building trust, making sure citizens understand their rights, and also how their money is being spent. They offer 10 key principles, but maybe 3 stand out for projects like these.
Go on.
1, focus intensely on the reader, not on yourself as the author. Think about what they need to know. 2, use active voice. We built the system, not the system was built by us.
Yeah.
It's more direct, more accountable.
Right.
And 3, critically, prefer using strong verbs instead of those abstract nouns nominalizations that just plague technical writing. Don't say implementation of the strategy, say implementing the strategy or we implemented the strategy.
That sounds great in principle. But how do project teams, often full of academics not trained in marketing or comms, actually manage this complex language stuff in practice?
It's a challenge, no doubt. But successful transformation usually starts with accepting you need segmented content. You need multiple versions of the same core research findings.
Okay.
You need the full, detailed technical report for your expert peers, absolutely. But you also need, say, a sharp 2-page policy brief for decision makers. And crucially, a plain language summary for the general public website using simple, direct sentences. One size definitely does not fit all.
Give us some concrete jargon replacements. I think we need to stage an intervention against the phrase exploitation of project results. It just sounds wrong.
I am completely with you on that one. It sounds awful. Instead of exploitation of project results, how about just putting research into practice or realizing the commercial potential? Much clearer, less exploitative sounding.
Definitely better. What else?
Instead of dissemination activities, maybe just sharing our findings or communicating results. And let's please replace deliverables, that's pure project management jargon, with straightforward terms like project outcomes or reports or tools and materials.
Simple. Direct. Okay. Beyond word choice. Structural presentation is key for readability too, isn't it?
Hugely important. That's where you get advice like using the inverted pyramid approach. Lead with the single most important, finding the conclusion, the main message right at the top.
Because people might not read further.
Exactly. A busy policymaker might only scan the first paragraph or 2, put the highest value information there, then follow with the supporting details. Also, use clear descriptive headings and bullet points. Break up those intimidating walls of text. Make it scannable.
And finally, this whole push for clarity, it's not just about making things easier to read, is it? It's actually intrinsically linked to Digital Accessibility Standards WCAG, which is another compliance requirement for projects.
Absolutely. That's a key connection. Plain language aligns directly with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. Simple language, clear headings, logical structure. These things benefit everyone, but they are especially crucial for users with disabilities who might rely on screen readers or other assistive technologies.
So it's a win-win.
It really is. Better communication is inherently more inclusive communication. You're basically fulfilling 2 major EC mandates at the same time.
And the good news here is that the Commission knows this translation stuff is hard. They're actually investing in tools to help, sort of a digital safety net. Our source material mentions some specific AI-based resources.
Yes. That's right. They've developed tools like WebText, which is designed to help rewrite complex content into simpler plain language with web-friendly formatting, and another called Accessible Text, which specifically applies easy-to-read guidelines and checks compliance.
So resources are there?
They are.
Yeah.
These tools can help project teams, especially large consortia with many partners, establish protocols, and ensure the language stays consistently readable across all their outputs.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener? The central lesson here seems pretty clear. Maximizing the scientific and societal impact of research. It hinges less on just the technical brilliance, important as that is, and far more on the commitment to clear, accessible communication.
Hmm.
That investment in clarity, in governance, in measurement, it seems to pay immediate dividends through actual engagement and use.
That's a perfect synthesis, I think. And if we just connect this to the bigger picture for a second, what's really fascinating here is the synergy between the quality of communication and strict regulatory compliance.
Now, so
Well, the same principles that satisfy the need for plain language.
Yeah.
Focusing on simple, direct sentences, clear structure. They align perfectly with the technical requirements for digital accessibility under WC.
Right.
It means, essentially, that the project that communicates best is also inherently the project that is most compliant and most inclusive. Better communication is more inclusive communication.
Okay, so since clear, concise communication guided by these 8 critical elements we've discussed is absolutely essential for Horizon projects to prove their immense value to the public, to policymakers, here's a final thought for you to mull over.
Okay.
If this specialized project speak is potentially crippling, let's say, a 40% chunk of the impact in massive EU-funded research, how much other groundbreaking work happening outside these major public funding structures is being unintentionally rendered almost useless simply because the researchers failed that final, crucial step?